This short session is designed to provide some dietary advice for support workers in different contexts. So the aim of what we're trying to achieve is to provide an overview of key areas of dietary advice and to equip the learners to support their service users within their scope of practice. So I'm hoping that at the end of the session, the learners will be aware of the basic principles of nutrition in relation to healthy eating using the Eatwell guide, weight management and nutritional support for service users undergoing rehabilitation. They need to be able to provide basic advice to service users within the scope of practice and to be able to signpost service users to reputable sources of further information and support. So we need to start with healthy eating because whatever the service user's condition, they still will need to consider a healthy diet. So why do we need a healthy diet? And there's three core reasons for that. Firstly, to provide essential nutrients. So an essential nutrient is one that the body cannot synthesize on its own or not in sufficient amounts and therefore must be provided by the diet, by what we eat and drink. The nutrients are necessary to enable the body to function properly. So if any one of them isn't present, the body is not going to function optimally. There are 6 categories of essential nutrients, and this includes carbohydrate foods, protein, fats, vitamins, minerals, and water. And we'll look at those in a little bit more detail in a while. So providing essential nutrients, but to prevent malnutrition, that can be undernutrition or overnutrition. And we tend to think of that as people underweight or overweight, but it can be a diet that lacks all of those nutrients, so it can be imbalanced. We might be lacking iron, for example, or calcium. So people can be a healthy weight, but still poorly nourished. And we're also trying to prevent nutrition-related ill health, and that is most often, related to overnutrition. So conditions like obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease and cancer, and undernutrition as well. So if people are undernourished, they're more likely to have pressure ulcers or sores, to be tired, feel weak, get ill more often, be more prone to getting infections, to have a slower recovery from illness or surgery or accident, have a lower appetite, poor wound healing, low mood. They may feel cold a lot of the time, and they may also have poor concentration. So lots of implications if we don't have a healthy diet. So what do we mean by a healthy diet? So whatever dietary advice a service user needs, their diet must contain all of the essential nutrients. And in the UK, we use dietary advice for healthy eating based on the Eatwell guide, which was published in 2016. And this applies for most service users, whether they're overweight, healthy weight or underweight, whether they eat meat or if they're vegetarian, whether male, female, whatever gender, whatever ethnic background, cultural, religious needs. So it is ideally useful for just about everybody unless they've got highly specialised dietary requirements. But we may need to adjust the Eatwell guide to meet individual needs, and that might be about portion sizes, but it might be about types of food as well. And when you look at the Eatwell guide, which we'll look at in a moment, it's a circle where different sections are in different proportions, trying to indicate how much of the diet should be from that part of the foods, but not at every meal, but perhaps over a day or even a week. And the only group of people that's definitely not relevant for are children under the age of 2. So when we look at the Eatwell guide, it is divided into these 5 food groups, and as I say, it indicates the proportions that we should be having. So at least 5 portions of a variety of fruit and vegetables a day. So that's the 5 per day message, but note it's at least 5. Meals are meant to be based on starchy foods, such as potato, bread, rice, pasta, noodles, any other starchy carbohydrates. Note that potatoes don't come under fruit and veg, they come under starchy carbohydrate foods. We should be having some protein foods. That includes things like beans and pulses, fish, eggs, meat, other protein foods like soya and tofu as well. And those should be at about 2 meals. And we should be having some dairy or dairy alternatives. So that's things like milk and cheese and yogurt, but it might be that people are having soya, almond, oat milks, different types of milks and yogurts. Ideally, those ones that are supplemented with calcium. So some of them aren't, but most of them are. And dairy foods that we get from cows have a high calcium intake, so that's a really important aspect. And there is a very small section for oils and spreads. So we shouldn't be having fat-free diets. We should be having more low-fat diets, but we still need some. And whenever possible, we need to be choosing unsaturated fats. And that includes things like olive oil and rapeseed oil, as opposed to things like butter and animal-based fats. So what we're ideally going for are fats that are liquid at room temperature, and they should be small amounts. So even if it's a healthy fat, like olive oil, we shouldn't be eating loads and loads of it because that is likely to lead to weight gain. So these 5 groups, if you go on to this link, this website, there's pictures and a lot more detail about what is included in each of these areas. So we also need to be mindful of drinking plenty of fluids, and that the government says 6 to 8 cups or glasses, which is about 2 litres of fluid a day. If it's hot weather, you need more. And a lot of people don't drink enough, so that's something that's really worth looking out for. And it doesn't include alcohol, so it has to be things like water, squash, fruit juice, tea, coffee, those kinds of things. But ideally some water as part of that, because too much tea and coffee can make people feel more dehydrated. So what is not in the Eatwell guide at all is foods high in fat, salt and sugar. So they're off the side. They're not in the overall plan because they're not essential. But many of us would consider them essential for quality of life. They're things that we like to treat ourselves to from time to time. So overall, most people eat more of those types of foods than is necessary or healthy. So for most people, they're going to need to eat less of those foods and perhaps in smaller amounts. So that includes things like takeaways, pizzas, cakes, biscuits, fizzy drinks, fried foods, ice cream, chocolate, sweets, those kinds of things. And alcohol, if people drink alcohol, it shouldn't be more than 14 units per week. And it's quite a good idea to have a look at DrinkAware website, which gives some information on alcohol, how much is a unit, which is quite a complex thing, and to try and help people to quantify their alcohol intake, because it not only contributes to their weight, but it also contributes to health risk if we're drinking too much alcohol. So to add on to this, I would go and look through the Eatwell guide with people, guide them to that, and questions that are worth asking. You know, how does your diet link if you were looking at the Eatwell guide? This is a good thing to ask service users as well. So if they're looking at that image of the Eatwell guide, you know, how do they think their diet matches to that? And that may be quite a good question to be asking people if there are concerns about how healthy their diet is. So if you've got time, ask about those kind of questions and what kinds of things people think mostly that we tend to eat too much of or not enough of.